How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here, and we're going to be joined by Adam Pearce of Ultimate Pro Wrestling, who's formerly of the Midwest, now lives in the West Coast. And we'll be talking to him for the first time in about a half an hour. And I guess we will start with the news. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
That's good. I guess first thing we should probably talk about is that SmackDown delivered a record low rating, a 3.2 last night. And I don't know. Got any thoughts on that?
I guess we could, I think a lot of it just has to do with the general decline in wrestling, and I'm getting more and more emails from people that are saying, you know, I don't like Steve Austin as a heel, and he's turning me off, and he's turning my friends off, and, you know, that's what they don't need right now. I mean, looking back, I think more and more that that Steve Austin heel turn was a really bad idea. At the same time, I think it's one of those things like Goldberg where they've done it, so now they got to stick with it, but now they're going to have to build a top babyface, and they're really going to have to, you know, they're going to have to make a strong effort to really make an actual top-level babyface, not two babyfaces that make shares to run off Steve Austin, that work in the opener. You know, they need to make somebody now, and I don't know who that is.
Who? It's got to be someone. It's got to be someone from WCW. It's going to have to be a Booker T or someone, because all of their guys are tainted. They got nobody ready. If they take a fresh guy, you know, anybody from WCW, if they take them now, because they are new to WFTV, they can shoot them to the moon. They have that. That's the one advantage. The one good thing about the current situation is, and it's the only good thing, is that they have a fresh group of talent coming in that they can mold and make, and are not limited by a perception that they're not top guys because they're all coming into a new environment. So that's the only good thing I can come. You know, and Bill Goldberg obviously would be. That would be what they need right now, and I don't think that's going to happen this week, so what?
And you know, one thing about last night, too, that I did think was good was, as much as I hate that stupid siren and the appearance of the WCW logo on the big screen, when that thing happened, they cut to a long shot of the crowd, and everybody got to their feet, because they were just dying to see somebody new. And
they did.
At King of the Ring, they will be seeing many new people. And
they better, and they will.
Turn around.
Hopefully, they will turn around. Mick Foley taped TSN's Off the Record today. I heard it was a really good show. It's going to air on July the 5th. Main highlights, he said he would be back wrestling. He was very defensive of The Rock.
Back wrestling as in an occasional match or full-time?
Not full-time. There's no way.
Okay.
Although he talked about it. A lot of talk about unions. It was brought up to him that if he was in another sport, the union probably wouldn't let him wrestle because he probably couldn't pass the physical. And he said the difference between wrestling and another sport is that in wrestling he can go and say, my knees are hurt, stay away from my knees, whereas in hockey or if he was a hockey player or a football player, he wouldn't have that luxury, which is true. But he came off really good. So anyway, that's that deal. A bunch of stuff over the weekend this weekend. Tonight's the big Memphis show. With Jerry Lawler against Lord Humongous, Emery Hale, with Jimmy Hart in the corner and Jackie Fargo in the corner, and Jimmy Valiant, Rocky Johnson, Bill Dundee, PG-13, Rock and Roll Express, Fabulous Ones, Road Warriors, and all that. So it's probably it'll end up being one of the biggest independent shows of the year. Saturday, of course, is the Pride pay-per-view.
I know he's under a mask, but there's just something funny about a Memphis Legends show with Emery Hale in the main event.
Well, the main event's Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Hart. It's just that they couldn't sell tickets to that match.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have much of a match. I mean, they're very old. At least Emery Hale is not old.
Sid was incapacitated.
I guess so. Yeah. I guess so. What other stuff? Let's see, WWF guys are going to be wrestling Saturday in Toronto, and then then Sunday in Fort Lauderdale. Usually their scheduling makes sense, but this doesn't. Not that wrestlers haven't done that forever and anything like that, but it's still usually, it's like if they were in Toronto and then like Montreal and then they were going to do Florida for TV, it's one thing, but it's like one shot in Toronto out of the blue, first day of the tour, and then they're down in Florida with Fort Lauderdale on Sunday, Tampa with Raw on Monday, and SmackDown on Tuesday. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about SmackDown last night. Any thoughts on the show? What do you think about it overall?
I think most of the things that we talked about on Tuesday when we had the Wednesday when we had the taping results, I still agree with a lot of what we said, and that, Benoit and Jericho should not have worked the opener. Spike Dudley should not have been in the main event. Just this same general.
Spike Dudley should not. I'll tell you what. Spike Dudley should not have been in the main event, and Keenan Albert should not be a semifinal because that's just. There's nothing against those guys, and they had probably about as good a match as those two were going to have, but there's just something about that matchup. People don't care about it. There's a lot of problems.
And I think part of the danger to me about the show was that all those things really were wrong, but at the end, it was a show that, for some reason, I actually enjoyed myself watching, and I don't know why that is, but when it was over, I thought, that was kind of a fun 2 hours, and I think that if they get into the habit of doing shows that are so totally backwards like this one, but are somewhat entertaining, they may just keep going down this path as opposed to, at least a couple of months ago they were doing these shows that made no sense, or had the horrible main event and Undertaker and Kane were involved and everything like that, and it didn't make sense, and everybody wasn't happy about it. And, because of that, they made some changes. This show, there are people in the WWF that thought it was a great show, and I somewhat enjoyed the show, and I think that, really, that's a bad thing.
That you enjoyed the show? No, there were some entertaining aspects of the non-wrestling, and the wrestling itself, I don't think there was anything wrong with the wrestling itself. I think there was a lot of stuff wrong with the positioning. I think there's a lot, and it's been,
I think
a lot wrong with
the positioning of everybody on the
positioning of a lot of the people on the show was really bad, especially. But okay, now saying that you enjoyed the show, was there anything? And again, this is the real one, because what's the the main thing for the show, especially at this late a date. And when it was over, was there anything that made you go, I can't wait to buy King of the Ring? Because there was nothing for me.
Absolutely not. In fact, there were things that made me not want to buy King of the Ring.
Yeah, the main event, if anything, just Benoit and Jericho did nothing on that show that made me want to buy it. Austin was super entertaining, but I don't,
But he was entertaining in that way that we talked about it a million times. Great, Steve Austin is really funny. He's a heel. But who is going to want to pay tickets to see him do this?
Yeah, well, it's Ric Flair in the Insane Asylum. There is nobody in the world who probably could have been more entertaining in that Insane Asylum than Ric Flair. but you know what? That was a complete disaster, and so is this. And don't be fooled. A lot of people, I don't know.
It's like every week they do something that hurts Steve Austin more and more. It goes all the way back to that one day where all of a sudden everybody knew that Steve Austin had a wife. And right then it's like, okay, this guy is not a redneck badass anymore. He's married. And
okay, but he does mistreat his wife,
now
though.
He's asking people to sign a petition, and he actually is going to cry when this petition gets ripped up. This is Steve Austin?
But you know what the other thing is that, he's walking around backstage, and, he's being nice to people, and they're being nice back, and it's sort of like, okay, we all know, us viewers, that he's being really phony, and he's not really a nice guy. But the point is all those people who work with him, they're just, hey, they're slightly nervous.
Sign it. You're right, it's not fair.
It's so stupid. And Jim Ross,
the whole thing to me was at the end of the show, everyone has signed this petition saying that this match is not fair. And Benoit and Jericho, at the end of the show, they run out to make the save for Molly, and it takes two grown men with chairs to run off Steve Austin. And I just thought, wow, they are really elevating these two guys. These guys are threats to Steve Austin.
We still got a week. Tajiri looked really good in the match with Crash Holly.
What a reaction.
Yeah, didn't he, though?
Hey, I got to ask you this question. Maybe I'm the world's biggest mark, but this is the second time that something like this has happened. And just incredible. Are they ribbing this guy on the air, or is it just me?
Oh, they're totally ribbing the name.
When Kurt Angle said, if you say your last name right after your first name, it sounds like just incredible. And everyone else started laughing, and Justin rolled his eyes and looked all pissed off, and I thought, they just got to be ribbing this guy. This cannot be funny.
No, I think some of this also to make Kurt Angle a geek.
Well, he didn't come off as geek there. He came off as making Credible look like a geek.
Yeah. There's some interesting stuff in the Ross report, which we just got. I got to read you two paragraphs. Have you read it, by the way, yet?
I haven't read the whole thing, but I read your notes on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll read you the two paragraphs. Well, one of them, then you basically know both of these. Anyway, it says, speaking of Canada, I don't know why. When I read this paragraph, I just started laughing. And I have no real reason to laugh other than Every reason. Anyway, speaking of Canada, Diana Hart-Smith has a new book almost ready to be released about her life in and around the business. Diana has had a very interesting life full of unique experience. I can't even do it with a straight face. Basically, he plugged her book, which is only funny because last week she did an interview, I think, on Slam Wrestling, and she goes, "Oh, it would be just so wonderful if Jim Ross were to plug my book. It would mean so much to me." So, sight unseen, he did, so he's a nice guy. And then the other one, which I thought was, I don't know if it's weird. I don't know what it is. He just goes, "Baltimore SmackDown was not sold out this week, even though the building marquee indicated as such, and we aired that." And he just goes, "Not good." It's like, who ever heard? I mean,
that's why Ross.
For the last 100
we always
years,
talked about Ross and Tony Schiavone and their credibility, and this is why Ross had more than Tony.
But I mean, for the last 100 years, they have been lying about sold-out houses. And Baltimore had about 8,800 people, and I would guess with a SmackDown setup, taking away seats, that sold out would probably be at 9,500. So they were actually, they had claimed sellouts that were a lot further away from sold out than Tuesday. But Tuesday was not sold out. But anyway, I don't know why. I just found that totally humorous. Kurt Angle's going to be on Conan O'Brien on Wednesday night. Cool. And mentioned that Nathan Jones and John Heidenreich are going to Ohio Valley, and said that we seem to be seeing a trend.
Albert could stand to drop a few pounds.
So he should.
That is never good news.
Nobody praises
That's almost
match.
the worst thing you can hear in the Ross report is your name. And
No.
To lose a few pounds.
But he said he's showing a definite improvement, so he was going both ways. I think it was like that positive reinforcement. Albert, you're doing great. Just drop a few pounds. We seem to be seeing a trend where wrestlers are slamming one another on the Internet. The only thing new about this is the advent of the Internet. I think I wrote these exact words. Not these exact words, but I wrote this exact thing this week. It's like, hey, when guys do these interviews on the Internet that sound like pro wrestling interviews, they're works, guys. You know what I mean? Let's see. Did you mention something else here? Don't.
Speaking of Albert.
Yes, what are we speaking about?
Not that it was a good match or anything, but I was so surprised by the quality of that Kane-Albert match.
No, I thought that match was as good as those two guys were going to do.
I think it's a standards thing. I mean, you wouldn't compare it to, like, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit or anything like that, but for those two guys, that was a hell of a match.
Yeah, I thought so, too. Part of the reason is that because Albert is so big, they allow Kane to sell for him like a wrestler as opposed to, your normal Kane match where like you have a guy like Kurt Angle who could throw him around the ring, he doesn't get to, so therefore, it's that boring Kane match. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you go like, oh God, this match isn't that good. But whereas with Albert, I mean, when he would put the guy down for a move, the guy wouldn't sit up and the guy didn't play monster, and it made for an even match. They had some good near falls. Yeah, it was a nice match. It wasn't bad at all.
Albert pressed Kane over his head, he became the scariest man I'd ever seen.
Yeah. Let me just see if there's anything else on my notes on that show. I tell you what, though. I did not like Tajiri, running away from Austin in that one segment, because it's sort of like he's already established. I think that Tajiri is an awesome worker. He really showed it. But he also has established that he's a little awesome worker that's afraid of all the main eventers. I
think the reason he was afraid of Austin was because Austin's beat him up on every TV show.
But still the same point. That's my point. That is my point.
Yeah.
My point is that even as an awesome worker, they have already told you that he is not to be taken seriously when he's in there with the top talent. And I just hate when guys have their knees cut off, especially when they're only 5'4" to begin with, and when their knees are cut off, they're like 4'11" or something.
He did look really small last night, but at least they put him in with Crash.
Crash and
that's what worried me when he was in there with Crash and he was even smaller. I went, oh boy.
Well, he is really
protect this guy like nobody else.
He's only 5'4".
I hope they do too.
It's one of those things. It's like the ECW. You just don't know how small those guys in ECW were. So Mikey Whipwreck is retired from wrestling due to all of his injuries, which is really sad.
He's retired already?
Yeah, he announced his retirement yesterday or so. There's something on the website.
That was September.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just know he said he's done. I think because how he felt after the Canadian shows, which were last week.
Huh.
I think he's done. Anyway, I'll have to reread that. But whatever it is, he said he's retiring or retired. Let's see. We have a whole bunch of people trying to book King of the Ring, which, you know what? 3 weeks ago we had people booking King of the Ring, and I think that every single one of them, with maybe one exception, was better than what's turning out, which is really bad. But anyway, we're going to give some people more chances. This is from Peter Konieczki. God, there was a famous sumo wrestler with that name. But anyway, not Peter, though. Anyway, Rhino over the Big Show. Okay. Tajiri over Perry Saturn, because he kicks him in the head again. Actually, that's kind of cool. I like that. Edge beats Christian, or the other way. Yeah, okay. Kurt Angle beats Steve Blackman. Okay. So those are all the TV matches for this week. Steve Blackman. That's right, Steve Blackman's not in this thing. So who's the guy that's...
Not in the tournament.
That's right, Steve Blackman got beat by Perry Saturn. All right, so who's the guy left? Jeff Hardy. Okay, Kurt Angle beats Jeff Hardy. Okay, so that's a good match. All right. Semifinals, Tajiri beats Rhino. Nah, it's not going to happen.
Nah, it can happen. Rhino beats him.
Okay, so this is on the paper. Angle beats Edge when Christian turns on Edge and costs him the match, or his help goes awry, which leads to a split. I mean, I'm just not looking forward to Christian and Edge splitting.
I was thinking the same thing last night because there are a lot of tag teams where, eventually it's time for them to split up and it's like, okay, good, now these guys can go on their own and do their thing. But there's something about Edge and Christian where you see them fighting with each other and it's almost sad that they're going to break up.
Also, I like their chemistry and charisma is a dual charisma. It's kind of like with the New Age Outlaws when they split them up. It was like you really saw how much both of them lacked that you didn't notice when they were a tag team. Yeah. Not that Edge and Christian lack that same thing, but they have so much more charisma as a duo than they would have as individuals.
I think part of it is the way they're kind of doing the skit is, they're talking about how they want to, each be in the King of the Ring and maybe meet each other in the finals, but the way they're doing it, they sound like they really don't want to because they actually like each other. And so you're sitting here thinking, these guys, they really are friends and they're going to break up. This is sad. Not like, the Dudleys break up. Okay, great. Go off. Do your thing.
Okay. We got a bunch of critical letters here, so I'm going to get to them right off the bat. This is from Matt, who says, the Steve Austin heel turn didn't have to start out the way it did. People can say the wrestling business is down because after WrestleMania there's always a lull. But by the way, I don't want to hear that for these ratings because the ratings of SmackDown were down 30% from the same week from last year. So it's not the season and it's not the post-WrestleMania. Anyway, but that isn't true. Last year WF got huge ratings after WrestleMania. True. Huge buy rate for Backlash. Granted, it was Austin returning for one night, but nonetheless it was a huge buy rate. Okay, the night after WrestleMania, Raw scored a 5.8. Actually, it was a 5.7, but that's okay. That's close enough. They got that because people were interested in seeing Austin as a heel. I don't buy that. They were interested in seeing WrestleMania, what happened after WrestleMania. Plus, this was also the week after that great skit that everybody was talking about, that everyone has forgotten about, which was that Shane McMahon appearing on Nitro, and there was so much curiosity of what's going to happen with WCW. With Bill Goldberg and Scott Steiner and all those guys being mentioned on Raw. Plus, it was the day after WrestleMania. That's why the rating was high. I don't buy that Steve Austin's heel turn meant anything for that rating. Anyway, the overrun got a 6.2. This included Hunter and Austin aligning. If that didn't take place, I think WF would be getting high fives to low sixes. Triple H should have never been put in there with Austin. A lot of people say that because it was one of those logic things. Anyway, it lacked logic. It wasn't given an explanation to help make sense. Triple H should have turned face, and the WWF would be riding high right now. Well, they wouldn't because then their only face that would be over would be on the shelf. He turned heel, and I can only assume that's what he wanted because he doesn't like playing the face. That was one of the dumbest moves he has ever made. He should have turned face, and him and Austin would be involved in a hot feud right now, which would be making him and Austin a lot of money. I'm not completely blaming Triple H for the floundering ratings and low buy rates, but he is to blame somewhat. Also, the WWF writers are to blame. They should have started to push newer people after Mania. Raven and Eddie Guerrero should have been given a chance and could have started to fight in higher card positions. And don't say the politics wouldn't have allowed it because it's not all true. If Hunter turned face after Mania, was involved in a hot feud with Austin, right now making tons of money, would he care about two guys moving past low card status? I don't think so. In conclusion, if Triple H and Austin weren't aligned after Mania, the WWF would not be doing less than normal business. Okay. This is from Neil, who goes, I am an avid reader of your columns. Obviously not avid enough. But after reading last night's SmackDown review, the reason I say that is because I didn't write last night's SmackDown review. I think that was Jeff. That was Jeff, right? Jeff Merrick last
either
night?
Jeff or Alex, neither of which are currently doing this show today.
Yeah. That reminds me of something. I was on a radio show about a week ago, and this guy goes, I love your IATA show. It's really funny. It's really entertaining. And he goes, that Alex is so funny. And I thought, that was just...
Was it Man-Cow? At least he didn't say Bruce.
It wasn't Man-Cow. It wasn't Man-Cow. No, I know. Then it would be Bruce, right? Anyway, Anyway, I understand your arguments, but I think today's wrestling fan is going to watch the WWF no matter what. This is like Foley with that drug chapter. It's just like the wrong week to be saying this. I don't think there's any way people say to themselves, oh, man, Jericho just lost to so-and-so. There's no way he can possibly beat Austin.
Really?
I don't know
well,
if they say... That's what's been happening in wrestling for the last 100 years or so. They want to be entertained. Just entertain me and I'll watch. The WWF needs to maintain the audience they have now and wait for the new thing that will spark the next boom. A boom needs to reach out to people who aren't watching wrestling like right now. Mike Tyson did that, and word of mouth, coupled with good wrestling and entertaining vignettes, generated the ratings thereafter. Same thing with the NWO angle. Wrestling became hot and cool to watch. The mainstream audience of today simply doesn't care anymore. WWF was hot. Now it's not hot. It's all cyclical. Can it be accepted the rating?
Oh, go ahead.
What?
I'll rant in a minute.
Okay. Can't it be accepted that the ratings of last year were the absolute peak of the wrestling boom, and the slow downward trend is the result of wrestling losing its mainstream appeal? You know what? If it was, I can accept that was last year was the peak because when it was going on, I thought it was. And if it was a slow downward trend, I would go, you know what? It's a slow downward trend. This is not a slow downward trend. This is like nothing I have ever seen before, and I've been following wrestling for 20 years. I have never seen things fall off a cliff. There was one period in '92 where over the course of about, let me see, over the course of from May through December, we had a decline that was probably similar to this. Ratings-wise, maybe, I'd have to look back. That was a real bad period, too. And, in fact, that precipitated a period that stayed bad until 1996 in this business. So, anyway. But this is scarier because that decline did not affect the hardcore fans, and this decline is affecting the hardcore fans. You know, I think a lot of it is the loss of WCW on that one. Anyway, every show peaks no matter how popular it is. Even the second year of Survivor was down in the ratings. It happens. The second year of Survivor will be next year, and it probably will be down in the ratings. It happens. I don't think it matters who they push, but rather how they do it. Hell, I was impressed with Albert press slamming Kane. Pushing Edge, Jericho, and Benoit to the moon will not necessarily bring in the mainstream audience that was responsible for the monster ratings of a year ago. I do agree with that. I honestly don't think if the WWF executed perfect booking strategies that wrestling could maintain those huge ratings. No, but they would not decline as quickly as they did. Especially the buy rate aspect of it. If the WWF continues to put out a product such as they've been doing the last couple of months, the core fans will remain. This is a very bad day to say that. I write this because I thought last night's SmackDown was one of the most entertaining shows in a long time. Austin was tremendous with every little gesture. His timing was perfect. The bow and handshake interaction with Tajiri was hilarious. That's not what draws wrestling ratings, though. Anyway, as was his wiping off his hand on the shirt after he shook hands with that one guy. The subtle stroking of the Think's bald cap with his thumb. Angle's just incredible line at X-Pac and Albert breaking character. When Spike ripped up the petition, tell me you didn't need to say, oh shit, Spike's dead. Stacy Keibler, enough said, etc., etc. I know this is long, but in summary, just enjoy it. You ready to go, Brian? Because there's more.
You know,
afterwards.
We have heard just enjoy it for about 8 months now, and most of the time it was about WCW, and WCW is now dead. And I've got to say that as much as I made fun of Thunder, and as much as I made fun of Nitro, there were some days where I enjoyed Thunder more than almost any show that I'd ever seen because it was so bad, and it was hilarious, and I was entertained. But at the same time, things continue to dwindle, and I just want everybody to go back to our website, if you really have a problem with this, and look at the feedback section, because it goes all the way back to, I think November. And go back there and read some of the comments about the WCW shows after I made fun of them in the Thunder review and the Nitro review, and you will hear the exact same things that people are saying now about the WWF. And all you have to do is look at where WCW is right now. It is dead. And we really don't want WWF to be in the same position. So just say, don't complain about this stuff, just enjoy it, is not helping.
Especially when the numbers are declining. If we are complaining while the numbers are going through the roof...
And getting higher.
And getting higher, then please write us that, because then we're stupid. But as the numbers dwindle, if we're giving reasons why the numbers are dwindling, you can say, okay, your reasons are wrong. These are the right reasons. You have the wrong reasons, and that's good. But don't say there are no reasons, because obviously there are. Monday, we are going to have as our guest Jim Cornette. So that should be a really entertaining show, and we'll probably hear many, many times about The Last Dance on the 27th in Louisville. And we'll talk about that, and we'll probably know on Monday far more about that lineup by the end of that show than we do about King of the Ring. Because we still actually only know Undertaker against the Stalker, and we know the three-way, and we know Kurt Angle against Shane. And is there anything else that we know?
I wonder if there's ever been a King of the Ring where we didn't know the brackets the week before the show.
The Monday before the show? We will know Monday night, the brackets. That's what I was told, is that they're going to do the brackets on Monday before the show.
Okay.
Which is, now I know there's never been a King of the Ring where they did the brackets the Monday before the show. They usually do it like 6 weeks before the show, and then, But anyway, that's something else. Let's see. Are Benoit and Jericho being, let me get some of this other stuff here, actually, first. I really enjoyed listening to your taped archive shows. However, I don't understand why you are so in love with the WWF. This is from Bill Nelson. They are so lame most of the time. Why can't you even admit when they are? For example.
Start listening to archives instead of just looking at them on the website.
Yeah. For example, on your May 10th, 2001 show, you alluded to the fact that the viewing numbers for the WWF were down among wrestling fans over the age of 30. Duh. Did you ever think of the fact that we in that age group, an age group, by the way, which I'm a member of, grew up with quality wrestling? I tell you what, now, this is one thing. Okay, you got to look at those tapes, and I'm not knocking. I grew up with some great wrestling, and in the 80s there were some awesome matches involving a lot of people. But you know what? There are some awesome matches in the last couple of weeks on WWF. I don't mean to be, I mean that stand up to any matches of any era, as far as like that tag match in San Jose and the Austin match with Chris Benoit from Edmonton. I mean, those matches would have been match of the year candidates any year. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not winners, but people would talk. But anyway, that's not.
I don't want to preach to older fans because I'm not one of them. But when you're an older fan, you look back on a lot of things that you saw during your childhood, and you remember them as being very different. Because I can remember when I was very young, I thought the Ultimate Warrior was the greatest wrestler in the world, and it turns out he was horrendous. And if you actually look back at a lot of these tapes, a lot of that stuff doesn't hold up, but. You have a fond memory of it, and your memory is usually very kind.
Okay, but anyway, now we are left with one choice that puts out crap. Second, when you talked about the fact that a recent WF house show in Ohio was canceled due to wrestlers being injured, to which your esteemed partner, Brian Alvarez, responded by saying, I don't feel sorry for them because they refuse to elevate new wrestlers, and they're left with 4 stars, and when one of them gets hurt, they're screwed. Your only response was, oh, well. I guess that was my response. Oh, well. Oh, well, the other thing is that they didn't sell enough tickets to the show is actually the real reason it was canceled. Anyway, I got news for you, Dave. AWA, ECW, WCW. What is that? What's that? They're all out of business? They all had good wrestling and wrestlers, not only WWF. And contrary to your opinion, this was a good one, actually. Contrary to your opinion, there were great pay-per-views before 1997. Damn. I'm learning something new. Anyway, that's why those of us over the age of 30 prefer to watch old wrestling tapes rather than tune into the WWF crap. Don't you ever see anything negative about the WWF? Never. There's nothing wrong with the WWF. Everything is perfect. Especially, anyway, I know Adam's going to be up in just a second. I'm sure that Vince McMahon loves you. You should ask him about that. He actually doesn't. I don't know that he hates me, but I don't know. Thank goodness you get guys like Tom Zink, Billy Graham, Nick Bockwinkel, Bruno Sammartino, and Bad News Allen to tell it like it is and refuse to genuflect to His Majesty Mr. McMahon. Okay. Anyway, I was just entertained by that letter. We got Adam Pearce up here. Adam, how are you today?
I'm good, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Hey.
We're doing really good. You know, Adam, why don't you let everyone know a little bit of background? I know that you started in the Midwest and actually just in the last year or so moved to California, and a lot of it, I guess, was it mainly for wrestling that you moved? And tell us a little bit about, why you made the move.
Actually, to be perfectly honest with everybody, I didn't move out here for wrestling at all. My girlfriend's out here. She goes to San Diego State University, and honestly got tired of the Chicago winters and decided to make a change for myself to get into school out here. Just so happened there's some pretty decent wrestling promotions out here as well, so I kind of lucked out. Them winters in Chicago can get pretty brutal at times.
Yeah, I would only spend a day here every now and then, and it made me glad I lived here.
No doubt about it.
So you grew up in Chicago?
Absolutely, about 25 miles north of Chicago in a city called Waukegan, which is actually right in the middle of Milwaukee and Chicago, about 45 miles in each direction. Broken in business about 96, just out of high school, trained with ex-AWA jobber Sonny Rogers, who somebody may remember.
I do.
Yeah, well, unfortunately nobody else does, anyhow.
I don't.
Make a long story short, trained with him on the north side of Chicago, along with guys like Danny Dominion and Ace Steele, who you may have heard of, who were all alumni of Windy City Wrestling, Sam DeCero's camp. Christopher Daniels was an alumni from there as well, and they all broke in together, so it's kind of a little lineage there.
And now, you worked for Mid-American Wrestling for a while, right?
Sure did. Your same promotion had just lost their building in West Dallas.
Right. I was going to ask you about that because I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, there was actually an interesting thing. They had an article in the newspaper. I think it was on Sunday.
Right.
And it was a nice long article, and then. I guess because of the publicity from the article, the Knights of Columbus, where they've been running for I don't know how many years, probably 5-6 years,
right,
kicked them out of the building.
Exactly. And, the odd thing to me is that the article didn't really portray them in a negative light. I think the thing that did their downfall there was the exposing of the hardcore nature of the promotion, which in reality they only had, 1 or 2 matches per show in that hardcore genre. And I think the Archdiocese in Milwaukee there took exception to it. And my personal feeling is that they didn't really pay attention to Mid-American Wrestling. They've been running shows there since like 95 without any contention. So I guess in this instance, no publicity would have been better publicity for them at this point because obviously now the Archdiocese put a kibosh on the whole thing.
I got an email about that, actually. I wanted to read this to you. Just interrupt because it's actually fairly long, but it had to do, it goes, this email is in regard to recent events with Mid-American Wrestling as well as Adam Pearce, your guest today. You may want to ask Adam what his thoughts were about MAW. He used to wrestle for them in their pre-hardcore days. He left the promotion shortly after they became hardcore in 98, or maybe it was early 99. Did you just leave just because you moved here, or is there any other reason? Honestly, I moved here, as just so everybody knows, in November of 2000. So at that point, I was still living in Chicago. And at that time, I just didn't agree with the way that Carmine DeSpirito, who owns Mid-American Wrestling, was running it. He was tapping into that hardcore thing, and at that point, he was having a lot more matches on the card hardcore. Now, previously, it was just traditional wrestling, and he was doing fine by that, and started using guys like Ian Rotten, who I have no problem with whatsoever. These guys are all my boys and all that. But at that time, when half the show was turning into blood and guts, they were turning the crowd. Half the crowd was in riots during the show, and it's just something I didn't want to be a part of. I didn't necessarily agree with it at the time, so I moved along, and since then patched up things between myself and Carmine beliefs-wise. I guess in that respect, I'm somewhat old school and still am, to where I think wrestling is wrestling and the hardcore stuff is something else. But, nonetheless, he did what he did to make money, and I can't really fault him for that. I know it paid his bills for a long, long time, but unfortunately in the long run it caught up with him. Okay, because before then, and they were talking about you, was probably the best pure babyface I've seen with so little experience on the indie level. He did return as a heel for a few shows last year before moving to California and was equally as good as a heel, but you could tell his heart wasn't into working here anymore, not that I blame him. Anyway, and he goes, one thing I noticed what was wrong with the Mid-American article in the Journal Sentinel was the claim that there were never any problems with shows in the building. He goes, that isn't true. Ever since the promotion went hardcore in 98, it was rare for there to be 2 shows in a row where there wouldn't be at least one fight in the crowd. I have not been to a single show in the last 3 years where there were less than 2 or 3 people kicked out. Most of the shows, it reached double digits. Most of the old fans got scared off by this and stopped coming, being replaced by, how can I put this nicely, a less than savory element who invariably would be quite drunk by the time the main event came. It didn't help when Ian Rotten felt he needed to shoot on the mic every single time he was out there, and particularly when he gets personally offended and starts picking fights with any fan who doesn't show what he considers proper respect, whether he is supposed to be a face or a heel at the time. Frankie DeFalco was almost as bad at picking fights with fans, but at least wrestles early enough in the card that the fans are still sober. And I should point out this is a matter of getting good heat because DeFalco is supposed to be a comedy babyface, but like Ian, he takes his fan comments seriously. Anything on that? Or I wish I could say that what he just said in the email was false. Like I just touched on, there was fights in the crowd, and that's part of the reason why I left in 98. And as far as the drinking goes, I think being in Milwaukee and being in wrestling, beer's going to be involved to begin with. And I think everybody expects that. But when it gets to a certain degree where, like I said, there's violence breaking out, and a lot of times security would have to break up fights between the fans and wrestlers, it gets to be a little much. And I think they toned that down after a while and learned their lesson, which is the reason why I came back in 99 to work for them. I think that what he's touching on in that email is probably as extreme as it got, and I think it calmed down, like I said, after that, and got back to a normal type show where maybe 1 match or 2 would have a hardcore element in it, but beyond that it was pretty much, calmed down. I feel bad for Carmine, known him since 96, to lose his building. I know that it's his livelihood, and that's all he does. And I think at this point in time it's a lot better than it was in 98, and I don't think he really deserved to lose his building at this point. Now, if it had happened in 98 when I left, I would have completely agreed with everything. But that being the case, he's going to move forward just like I have and all the fans have. And I think the fans that went to Mid-American Wrestling every month did so because they were entertained completely, loved what they were seeing, and
and the beer didn't hurt at all, actually, as I said earlier.
Okay, he goes, the guy continues and goes, I can say this because I've been a part of Mid-American Wrestling since the mid-'90s, and I've seen what was once a fun promotion turn into something way too serious and downright scary at times. However, I want to remain anonymous because I don't feel like getting heat with Carmine or Ian. Okay, that's about pretty much it. Okay,
Right.
As far as now, what promotions have you worked for? I know I saw you on the UPW show,
Right.
and I've seen your name on a lot of the smaller Southern California shows. What else have you been working down here?
Predominantly, I've been working for UPW and another promotion called Millennium Pro Wrestling, which is owned by Paul Ventimiglia out of Los Angeles. Beyond that, I've been kind of laying low. I'm working 1 or 2 dates a month. That's pretty much about it. I know now that with APW, some things are starting up where I'm going to be going up to the San Francisco Bay Area and doing some things there. And I'm always trying to come back to the Midwest as much as I can and work a couple shots here and there like I'm going to be doing in July. But, I'm trying to focus myself now in getting an education further than what I've already placed in and just trying to move up in the wrestling business. I don't really know that working, shows for $10 or $15 is going to help me much. I'm trying to stay in a realm where I can further myself and learn more things to get to that upper echelon of the wrestling business, which has always been my goal. I think UPW is a venue that can do that. Certainly All Pro Wrestling up in Northern California is another place in which that can happen. And I just look forward to learning from the guys up there that have been around, Christopher Daniels and Michael Modest included, just to take little pieces of what they're doing and the success that they have garnered and try and capitalize on that for myself.
What are you doing in school?
In school, I'm trying, and this may sound funny to some people who know me, but anyways, I was going towards being like a chiropractor type thing or sports medicine and kind of got away from that. Now I want to go towards broadcasting. I think speaking is something that I'm strong at. I'm not putting all my chips in the wrestling basket as I did when I was, first breaking in. I don't know if that's where I'm going to be in 5 years, but I think using my mouth has been more successful than using my body in certain extents, and I think that I could capitalize that on the future and possibly, I don't know, Dave, work next to you someday.
I want to mention one thing. We got Jim Ross was on WF Bite This, and here's some of his comments for today. He said that Steve Austin is happy with his current heel character. He says Triple H was slated to fill one of the top 2 face slots that were vacated by Austin's heel turn and Rock's movie departure. Several people have actually emailed this in today, and they're right. That next day when Hunter did the run-in to help Austin, the day after WrestleMania, they really made a mistake by having Austin then align with Helmsley.
Yeah,
because the
that
people
was something
really
that was straight
did.
out of WCW.
Yeah,
no
people did want the
explanation
turn.
for it, he just did it.
Yeah, people wanted the turn real bad, and there was actually a great explanation with Vince and everything, and Austin you know what I mean? Where Helmsley didn't know. I mean, it all fit the puzzle, and then they just put them together. And with Rock out, that was, the timing of that wasn't the best. And then I hate that false tease. Remember that one show, the SmackDown they did?
God, they did
where they spent the whole show teasing that Austin. What?
They did a ton of those leading up to that one. They were all stupid.
Yeah, but that one laugh,
once you do it and everybody wants it so badly, and then you just laugh at them, what do you expect the fans to do the next time?
Yeah, and then half the people that were in the WWF that were in that decision-making capacity, this was the Thursday after the SmackDown, that fake tease, they wanted to go on Raw that next Monday and do the real one, and I'm going like, oh my God. It's like you just did the...
What do you guys
go ahead, Adam.
To me, and speaking on that topic, to me, I don't know, and you may disagree, but I think it would have made more sense if they knew ahead of time that The Rock was going to go do this movie and being one of the top 2 baby faces with Steve Austin. Wouldn't you have waited for the whole heel turn until somebody else could get established before you go ahead and turn the other top baby face and then leave yourself short-handed? To me, that would have made more sense.
Especially because, theoretically, if we're looking at long-term, which we were doing in February, and evidently they weren't, they had Helmsley all set up for Austin.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about, everyone's going, it makes no sense for Helmsley to beat Austin before WrestleMania in that 2 out of 3, and we were going, but it does set him up. When Austin wins that title from Rock, they got Helmsley to go all summer until Rock comes back, and then they didn't do it.
Right.
So now there was, so what was the purpose of Helmsley?
What I think that might have been better is if maybe right after WrestleMania, Austin would have stayed babyface, and they would have gone with the Austin Hunter deal, and then maybe do a double turn later on down the road, because I just think that the timing of Steve Austin turning heel the day that he achieved the goal that everybody was just dying to see him achieve was so stupid, it's like he came back after a year. He really was a fresh face.
Right.
And he was so over, and the fans wanted to love this guy and see him as a champion so bad. And he finally gets it, and he joins Vince McMahon that day. And it's like, what a slap in the face.
They could have milked it for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Could have milked it.
He said that, that the Triple H will be a huge fan favorite when he returns in October or November, that Rock will be back in August. He says raising the bar is perfecting the art of storytelling in the ring and ring psychology. Raising the bar is not going through 3 tables one week and 4 tables the next.
I agree.
He said he
was
was not
that, though, after Raw.
Yeah. He said he was not comfortable with Kurt Angle doing the moonsault off the top of the cage. He said that whenever he tries to, this is actually kind of funny. Whenever he tries to say something good about Paul Heyman, people always twist it around. I don't know. I thought that's something. He says that he wishes Jerry Lawler could return to the WWF, but he doubts it's possible with everyone's current mindset. He says it's less than 50-50. He says the WCW product will be different than WWF. The look of the show will be different. Obviously, they're talking about a TV show.
Right.
He goes, different graphics, different pyro, different music, different lighting. Talent roster will be new and fresh when it's all said and done. New broadcasters. Storylines will be well thought out with more continuity in mind. I hope so. The vast majority
what would happen if they started this WCW show, and just because everything was so different and people are really bored with the WWF product right now, it just immediately started killing them in the ratings?
I'd laugh.
Fine.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't it, though? When you really
Wonderful.
think about it, look what happened the first week of Nitro.
That's true.
The first week of night,
It
yeah,
wasn't like
that's
a
true.
slow growth or anything like that. They started with a bang and started kicking their ass immediately.
And thinking about the boys that have been working for WCW since Turner, that'd be a nice breath of fresh air. Instead of coming to work disgruntled, they'd be happier than hell.
Yeah. A lot of those guys, I mean, it really is good for them to be in an organization. For all the knocks we made of WWF, I mean, an organization that really is, they're so much more organized than WCW ever was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He goes, the vast majority of the current WCW roster have great attitudes. Some of the signatures they have signed are not ready to be announced. That's why a complete list has never been released, which we know. Hugh Morris needs to drop some weight. Says Lance Storm is going to be excellent. Jindrak and O'Hare need to learn how to tell stories and not rely on their high spots. Says nothing new on the Goldberg front. He says that they have been trading phone calls. They're waiting for Time Warner to close out the DDP contract. As time goes on, WWF people will transcend into WCW, and WCW will transcend into WWF. They're going to do back and forth, which we knew. He goes, this was an interesting one. He goes, Memphis, OVW, and UPW wrestlers will not be going to WCW, at least not anytime soon.
Really?
I think that's a mistake. I don't know,
though. I think that might be better, at the very beginning, because
you're
who's
right.
really ready right now?
No, not at the
You
very
don't want to bring
beginning.
somebody up and put him in WCW that's not ready because it makes him look like the B League.
Well, on top of that...
No. I think that there's... Okay, I mean, I would say as far as the first week or the first 3 weeks, I would agree with that, but I think that by about the third or fourth week, they should start doing vignettes with somebody and, teasing for 5-6 weeks somebody new coming in, like in the old days, because they got this roster of guys, and I think there are a few guys that are ready.
Steve Bradley,
I think Rico Constantino is ready. For maybe in some ways, maybe more than Steve Bradley.
Yeah,
I mean, as far as a whole character, and bring him in to be a star. Don't bring him in to be an opening match guy like K-Quick, because what's the purpose of that?
Exactly. I think the most important thing for WCW is to reestablish all the guys they had on TV to begin with, get them over with the people, and then worry about that.
Yeah,
And that's going to take a while.
The thing also, like we talked about earlier, is they've got all these guys that people know, but they have no limitations or preconceptions because they're reestablishing them. So, if there's a guy there who was a mid-carder in the old WCW, they're not locked in that mid-card position. And they shouldn't think of them as this is where, you know what I mean? Because that was one of WCW's big problems is everybody was locked into this position. And it's sort of WWF's problem as well right now.
Right.
Right now, yeah. But, I mean, just look at anybody that jumps ship to any promotion. You can do anything you want with them the first day, no matter what happened before. I mean, people, that was the whole deal. You get jobbed out, and then you leave the company, but you could still start with a new company. Look at Jericho.
Exactly.
Everyone thought he was just some mid-carder, and his debut, if they really would have pushed him from the beginning as a top guy, it would have worked.
Yep.
He's certainly getting over now, that's for damn sure.
What is your thoughts, as far as, one of the names that was mentioned about WCW at one point was Josh Wilcox, who you did an angle with and then a match with. What were your thoughts about working with Josh Wilcox?
Josh has a great attitude. Josh is one of those guys that loves the business so much, and will listen to every single word you say and just hang on it. I think the biggest thing that would hold Josh Wilcox back, and this is not a knock on him, I mean, and he knows it as well as I or anybody else does, is that he'd need to learn how to work first. And I think he would need to go somewhere like Louisville or Memphis and sit down with Bobby Eaton or Danny Davis or one of these guys and learn the business. He already appreciates it. He already loves it. He's got that in his blood like all of us do. But now he has to learn how to fine-tune it and actually perform it instead of having somebody hold his hand out there. And once he gets that down, there's enough personality inside him, I think, at this point that's just waiting to escape. And if WCW wanted to capitalize on and say this is an XFL guy or something like that along those lines, Josh Wilcox is the perfect specimen simply because of his desire and his determination and pure love for the wrestling business. I had nothing but good things to say with Josh Wilcox. I talked to him last night, and he's back up in Oregon. He's doing really well, and he's waiting. He's had some contacts with people within the World Wrestling Federation, namely Dennis Brent, about possibly doing some things, and I guess he's just waiting on that phone call, and I know he's keeping in great shape, and I know he's watching his tapes, and it was a pleasure to be in the ring with him. I'm glad that I could have something to do with it, and I think, if I made him look decent, and hopefully that rubs up somewhere in somebody's office as well. We got Wilcox, but Pearce did his job too. So, whatever. I love Josh Wilcox. He's my boy, that's for sure.
One thing, when I saw you on that UPW show, is the first thing I thought of is there's always the talk on this show all the time is that the whatever happened to managers. We all grew up with wrestling managers who, especially with the idea of. Whenever it comes up, there's a guy, whether I'm just throwing out a name, Benoit, where someone will go phenomenal in the ring,
can't talk.
But his interviews are holding him back. And my thought is I grew up with a million guys who couldn't talk at all, that drew money, that were good workers, or not even necessarily good workers. Sometimes they were just menacing guys that still didn't talk because they had a Bobby Heenan or somebody like that, Jim Cornette with Ray Traylor, and I mean, and everyone goes, well, who is there? And when I saw you. I mean, what I was impressed with is first of all, you can bump and you know how to work, so that's an advantage because eventually the manager needs to get in the ring.
Sure.
But the thing is, you can really talk.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. And growing up in Chicago, Bobby Heenan, I was on TV every single Saturday night, and that's somebody that I try to emulate in terms of speaking. And like you said, back in the days, even with John Studd, who couldn't talk a whole hell of a lot, Bobby Heenan was there snapping one-liners. and where is that now?
Or work, or anything. Just stand there and look menacing.
Where is that now? And I agree with you. There's a couple of managers of the independent scene, one up in Minnesota named Mortimer Plumtree, who, if this was 10 years ago, would have already had a job. Another guy that comes to mind like that is a guy named Dave Prazak out of the Midwest who can talk, too. But at this point, is there even a place for a male manager in the upper, promotions? And how would you reestablish that to the people to make them, again, take them as the incredible characters when all you're seeing now is a bunch of TNA? So I think that's a problem. I think if they were going to do it, I would do it in WCW. Try it out. Guys like Jim Cornette and Bobby Heenan, I mean, obviously their craft is something that has been completely forgotten. And I think that's crap. I think that's something that made wrestling great. And how many times did you love it when you saw Hulk Hogan blast Bobby Heenan in the forehead with a big boot at the end of the night? I mean, people miss that. People miss that. And especially I do. That's the type of thing that I grew up watching. So, I mean, I think there's a place for it, definitely. I think it should make its comeback. And if that's the type of role that would suit me better than actually getting in there and bumping every night, or bumping several times every night, I should say, then, hey, I'm up for it. I don't care. I didn't get in this to be a superstar by any means. I'm just there because I love the business. So whatever's clever is what I say. I think there's definitely a place for it.
I think that's one of those things that it just hasn't been done for so long that if the right person came along, it could really be something cool, something new.
Exactly. I mean, just, J.J. Dillon and the Four Horsemen, I mean, that stuff was great. When you have that like a leader of the pack that can do the talking and take the big bump and it's like throwing the food to the lions. I mean, the manager was always that. Always got his ass beat in the end, and people love to see that, and it's missing now. I mean, I'd rather see someone like Bobby Heenan or someone newer anyway, a male manager taking big bumps than seeing women like Terry and Trish Stratus put through tables. I mean, I think it's getting a little old, and I think that maybe now would be the time to do something in terms of bringing back a male manager. Just like you said, it's fresh, and it could captivate people. Why not? They haven't seen it for so long. Let's see something a little more serious. I mean, that's just my opinion anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's really, like with the women, the other thing with the women, and I mean, there's a role for them too. I think there's too many of them, but there is a role. But the thing with that is you never get any real satisfaction at the end with the women, especially because they end up putting them in the ring in these matches that, it's like, when the match is over, it's kind of like, oh, that was kind of ugly. You know what I mean?
Here's my take on that. When the women first started coming in and getting big as managers, everybody always anticipated them taking that big bump. And there was always that buzz. And then when they finally took the big bump, it was like, ooh, ah, well, where do you go from there? Now you got them doing matches, and then obviously they can't work, and they're filling space. I mean, I guess there's a place for them. I agree with you, there is a place for them, but once they took that big bump, now you've taken that away. It's not like you're going to get that big pop every show now, and when you do, it's not as big as the time before, and pretty soon nobody cares about it to begin with. That's the problem I see with the women managers, and it's only going to get more blasé as it goes down the line. I can only see so many bra and panties matches before I want to throw up.
The other thing is, I think one of the things is, I was watching Sin when she was there for the OVW Southern title match that they had on SmackDown, and it was such a huge pop for her taking like a body slam because everyone was just dying to see it.
Right.
And if you protect one bump like that, and then the next week she's on TV and she doesn't do anything, and then maybe you build up to another bump 3 months down the road, it means something.
Right.
But once she gets in the ring and she's taking a bunch of horrible bumps and everything like that,
and pretty
it's like not only do you lose it because you just saw her be a horrible wrestler, but now the one bump means nothing.
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to say. Pretty soon she's taking suplexes and power bombs, and it's just not believable to me anyway. She should be dead.
Yeah.
She should be dead.
The one thing about Sin, okay, is that I consider Sin closer to a manager than a valet. In that her role, I mean, her role isn't really that TNA role as much as an old-time manager. She just happens to be a woman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen too much of her work.
But I mean, just because she's mainly out there doing interviews and, to get people over, whereas like most of these managers or women managers that are out there right now, their mic time, I mean, they're not out there getting anybody else over, and their mic work often leaves a lot to be desired. I'm going to ask Adam this one. This is actually a question from Ted. It's about the ratings. Actually brings up a little bit first about didn't the ratings go down horribly in '92 when Vince was in court regarding the steroid scandal? I'd have to look up everything. I mean, business went into a big decline after April of '92, but I remember a lot of it was live attendance more than ratings that went down, and there was a lot of reasons, and I think the negative publicity was part of it. I think that the booking in late '92 was real bad. That was when like Papa Shango was doing the voodoo with Ultimate Warrior and things like that. It was just a weak period. In the last couple of months, wrestling has taken quite a blow from the media in regards to death from people performing wrestling moves in their backyard and their little sisters, etc. Do you think the bad press in the media could be a reason why the ratings are so low? I mean, do you attribute any of this to the media as far as like the drop in the last couple of months?
I think it's residual. I think the business goes through cycles. It's up and it's down, and it's going to continue to be that way as long as the business is around. I think that obviously when the media wants to portray wrestling in a bad light, that helps it along. But I think it's going to go down eventually anyway. People get tired of seeing the same old thing night in and night out. They're looking for a change, and eventually it will come, and then the wrestling ratings will jump back up again. I think that there's too many, to put this mildly, well, the hell with it, there's too many marks in the wrestling business to begin with, and that's why you're seeing people out in the backyard, and they're getting the publicity, and then these same people are getting in the ring and killing each other. It's not as locked down as it should be. I think the wrestling business should be protected a lot more and weed out these people that are bringing the bad light onto the business, and that would eliminate the backyard stuff to a certain degree. Now, I mean, I was in my backyard doing wrestling moves, but I was 8 years old with my little brother, and we were doing headlocks instead of power bombs and pile drivers off the top of the fence and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
set yourself
different
on fire.
different things. But I think it's residual. I think the business goes through ups and downs, and now it's just going down a little bit. That's all. It'll rise back up. It always does.
I have a hard time with the putting the blame on the media, because I can remember, during the peak of this boom period,
the media was more brutal then.
Was, talking about this as being an angelic sport. They were burying it then.
Right.
In fact, if you remember, Vince McMahon was getting buried more than WCW at the time that Vince McMahon was starting to surpass WCW.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when all of the first slew of the negative things about, the language and all that, and they were basically portraying WCW as the cleaner group and WWF as a dirty group. And I remember there was this 1 week, and it was like, with all these stories on NBC and whatever, and then the next week it was like, the ratings for WWF jumped up, the rating for WCW went down, and it was like, okay, that's just what, that negative publicity didn't, I mean, and I'm not saying, there is negative publicity that hurts, and when you lose sponsors, then it does hurt,
It does.
Yeah.
I think that they could portray it in a more positive light. These people in the wrestling business are phenomenal athletes, and that, number one, is always overlooked, and that's always bothered me. People from other professional sports have tried to come into wrestling. A lot of them have failed, aside from the ones that have gotten notoriety doing it. But this is a sport, and if you want to call it sports entertainment, fine, but athletes are involved, and no credit is given where that should be. And I think people, if that was exposed to the media and people looked at it as a performance like it should be, and then noted that these guys are world-class athletes, then the business could have a whole turnaround of positive light shed upon it. Guys like Kurt Angle should be commended. This guy here is a legitimate athlete, and now one of the greatest wrestlers that I've seen growing up. And he's been in for how long? 2-3 years tops? I mean, he's a phenom.
2.5 years.
And I mean, that type of thing should be exploited on a positive note, as opposed to all this crap we hear on TV about people getting killed doing pile drivers in their backyard. If someone would just have the balls to expose something positive, you'd see a totally different influx of media stories and everything else, putting a positive spin on the wrestling business.
Well, the one thing I do have to say about the media is they're far more likely to jump on a negative story than a positive story.
Sure.
And it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you never see the news going. We're going to talk later on today with a young teenager that's helping the elderly. You never see that. It's always, this teenager killed 10 elderly people and, News at 5 or whatever. It's just the way it is.
I think it's just a reflection of our society, unfortunately.
There is one thing, though. I've seen some of those in some of the markets like L.A. and New York when I've been on the road. And where they try to do that SmackDown story on Thursday night on the UPN affiliate? Some of those are positive. They're actually so lame, too. But it was one of... anyway, let me get to... this one question is, what is the best match on the Pride show? Boy. I mean, I thought Fujita and Takayama was the best match as far as on the show. And a lot of people would say Matsui and Pele. Some people would say Chuck Liddell and Guy Metzger, but as far as just like...
I think it probably depends on what you like to see in your fight, too. A lot of fans like boxing because two guys are just pounding on each other. You're talking about Fujita and Takayama who are just going to pound on each other because that's what they do.
Because they had no defense.
I must have missed that one. I was watching an old Dusty Rhodes tape, I think. I missed that one.
Was there ever an incident between Paul Orndorff and Vader? If so, what was the story? Oh, there certainly was.
There was.
Many years ago, let's see, what was it? Paul Orndorff was road agent for
peak of his scariness. I just want to mention that.
Yeah, it's like 95-ish. And Paul Orndorff was, I guess, a retired wrestler with a bad neck and a bad arm. And he said, Leon, it's time for you to do an interview. And Leon said, I don't want to get up off my chair or something. Who knows what they said? Words were exchanged.
I think Orndorff said, get off your fat ass and do the interview. And Vader took exception to that, despite having a fat ass.
Anyway, being at the power plant, I can completely see Paul Orndorff saying that to a number of people. Believe me.
It ended up where they started arguing, and Paul Orndorff threw, I guess it was, he threw a punch with a bad arm. So is that the left or the right?
Left arm, yeah.
Yeah.
So he threw a left to Vader's jaw and crumbled him, and then started kicking him in the face before they were pulled apart.
And I think Vader went after him again after they'd been pulled apart, and Paul took him down again.
Yeah, and Vader got fired off of that one, which is why he ended up in the WWF. So that's the story there. We're going to start with phone calls right now. Ed in Texas, first up.
Yeah, hey guys, how you guys doing today?
Hey.
Really good.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One thing for you, Dave. Have you had a chance to see that short film on the Von Erichs' Faded Glory?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, I saw that the other day, and I thought it was pretty good. It's very protective, of course, but it did have a lot of old footage and a lot of interviews, and it's pretty good. You should check it out. I think you'll like it.
Now, is that on a website, or is it available for commercial release?
It's on a website. It's let's see, OneWrestling.com had a link to it on their issue for the 1st of this month.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was on page 5. They have a link to it. It takes you right to it, and you can play it on either your media player or your real player. And it's about 53 minutes. And,
I lived in Texas during one of those years. I think in 1983, 84, I lived in Texas for a year. And that was the peak. That was actually their peak. Right. And that was quite a period. I mean, as far as fan reaction and revolutionizing the business, because that was right before Vince went national with the entrance music and everything that he got credit for. And, I mean, we were seeing, the high production values of the TV and the entrance music and the young, athletic-looking guys. Freebird Von Erich feud. I thought it was pretty much revolutionary, actually, in wrestling.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Dave. Were you taking photographs at ringside at the Parade of Champions?
No, I was not.
Okay, no, because I saw somebody on the tape. I thought
that was El Dandy.
I don't know who that was. Oh, you know who that? There's nobody there that looked like me. Forget it. I was thinking back because I remember all the photographers that were like Craig Peterson, Bill Apter, and all them.
Well,
I'm not
there was a muscular guy with like a blue short, kind of curly hair.
I don't know who that was.
That was Roland Alexander.
Okay. And then my question for Chad is
Adam.
Who?
I mean, I'm Adam. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You better be,
Adam.
boy.
I've never seen you compete before. What could you tell me about your style of wrestling and some of the spots you like to do and some of your moves?
2 words: old school. I keep it very basic most of the time, as goofy as I get, as maybe as a dive. I try to tell a story in the ring, and I most often use my mouth more than anything else. If I could compare it to somebody, I guess maybe someone like a Larry Zbyszko type who's always flapping his gums. More likely than not, I'm end up as a heel in the match. I'm just the guy who ends up putting the pretty baby face over in the end. That's about it. Try to keep it clean, try and keep it tight, work a little snug, and just tell a good story. That's basically what I'm out there to do.
Okay. And are you in the business to make it in the WWF, or are you like Brian, who's just doing it like as a hobby because it's what he likes to do?
Well, in the beginning, to be honest with you, I mean, obviously that's every kid's dream is to go to the WWF, but as time goes on, it's like I tell people now, my dream essentially was to get into the business and to be a professional wrestler, and I've accomplished that. So anything else that comes and is going to come from this point forward anyway is bonus to me. I'm just taking it as one big roller coaster ride and having a blast while I do it. If something breaks, fine. If not, I've had a great time. Been overseas, done dark matches, had a blast, and I will continue to do so. So if that answers your question, I hope so. I mean, you never know in this business, and it's so hit or miss. It's who you know, not exactly what you know or what you can do. So a lot of times the people that deserve it most don't get it, and obviously been looking at some old tapes. Some people who never deserved it got a real big opportunity. So we'll just take it and play it by ear and see what happens, and hopefully stay safe in the meantime.
Okay, and are you going to be participating in that tournament that they're going to be having for APW?
I am going to be involved in the King of Indies tournament this coming October with APW. I got the invite from Roland Alexander about a week ago, and I'm very, very honored to be a part of that. I think I can bring something to that tournament. There's going to be some really great athletes involved in this thing, and I'm not too ashamed to say that these guys are better athletes than I, and I'm just honored to be included in the same brackets as them. I think it's going to be one hell of a wrestling experience, not only for us that are involved in it, but the fans as well. It's a big 4-day event up there in the San Francisco Bay Area, a lot of boot camp summits and things where the public can get involved. And there's going to be a whole week of legends with some people. I know Red Bastien and the Cauliflower Alley Committee are going to be heavily involved in this. And I think it's going to be a tremendous event, not only for APW and the independent wrestlers involved, but for the business in general. And just to open the business eyes to a lot of the young people that are involved, that have some talent and some upside, and hopefully can really spark interest in these individuals. And there's a lot of really, really positive attitudes involved, and I can't thank Roland Alexander enough for having the guts to put me on there. And considering some of the names that have yet to be released, I'm completely honored, and I think I was, in fact, more shocked than anything else to be asked to be a part of it, because my style is somewhat different than a lot of the guys involved. But I think it makes for a very healthy mix. I think you're going to see some really great wrestling action in the next couple of months, especially and culminating in October with this 4-day event. And it's something good for the record books. I think it's going to be a very positive thing, not only for me, but for everybody involved. So, yeah, definitely, most definitely. I'll be up there for APW representing Mid-American Wrestling, oddly enough, out of Milwaukee. And we're going to have a blast, rock and roll. Let's do it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know if they're going to be putting the tournament on video? Because I would really like to check it out if they do.
Well, I tell you, they'd be stupid if they didn't. I think that this thing will definitely be on video in some form. I don't know about webcasts or anything like that. I think plans for that type of thing are being finalized as we speak. The event's a couple of months away, obviously, so there's some time to prepare those things. But, yeah, most definitely I would say, and I'm just speaking on behalf of Roland Alexander and APW, that I know him from a business aspect, and I know that this will be on tape in some form. Somebody will profit from this, definitely.
Okay. I want to make mention real quick. We're going to have Roland Alexander on the show next Friday, so if you have any questions on, like, what their plans are or ideas to give them, because it's months away and there's time to implement it, next Friday's a good show to call in or to email in on that. Okay. Before we go to the next call, I want to ask you, we were talking a little bit about, talking about old tapes and things like that. What was, and the Von Erichs and everything, what was your favorite era and place when you look back at old tapes? Was it what you grew up and saw in Chicago or something else? And who would be the guys that, looking, as a kid you liked the most, and now looking back, you go, well, maybe I should have liked this guy more, or thoughts on that?
Someone asked me this, and I went on my website and I did a little spiel on who I admired and for what reasons. And I think there's a number of names that I could throw out there for different reasons. At the top of the list, I would have to say is Ric Flair. I think he was the pioneer and the absolute best in what he did, which is obviously different from what we see on television now. Guys like Jerry Lawler, Bobby Heenan, Larry Zbyszko I'd have to throw in there. Even guys like Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage. I mean, these guys were athletes of their time, and I always respected, and I guess I was always a mark for the heels more as a youngster. Guys like Brian Pillman, and I loved when he was doing the loose cannon thing, and I think that was, to me anyway, I got a big kick out of it. It was a blast for me to see. Going back even further, I loved the Midnight Express, that whole NWA 80s thing. Dusty Rhodes is huge, and I gained a lot of respect for him when I was in Atlanta at the power plant. I'm a huge mark for Dusty Rhodes. Love his work. Nowadays, I love Chris Benoit. I think he's excellent. I think he's as technically sound as I've ever seen. I love watching Dynamite Kid and his matches with Tiger Mask. I don't get tired of. And I certainly don't get tired of watching Flair and Steamboat either. I know I'm leaving a bunch of names out, but I could go on all day long about the wrestling business and what I love about it. But more often than not, the old stuff is what got me into it, the stuff that I really, truly love, and the stuff that I think I would be more cut out to do as opposed to the product that's on TV now anyhow.
Let's go to Sean. Sean, what's up?
What's up, guys?
How's it going?
Hey.
Hey, listen, I missed the first part of the show. What'd you guys think about the TV last night?
I enjoyed it.
It was an entertaining show. I didn't think it did a good job building up the pay-per-view. So I guess that would be my thoughts.
It was like one of those shows that on a different night would have been really good, but last night wasn't the night to do it.
Yeah. All right, and just one quick question for Adam. I wanted to know who you enjoyed working with, in UPW and some of the other promotions you worked with earlier than that.
Well, right now they got me involved in a tag team angle with Aaron Aguilera, who works as a hardcore kid, who's under WWF developmental, and right now he's at home healing from back surgery. And that's another thing that I think is missing from wrestling is really strong tag teams. I think that psychology is something that's untapped right now and could be exposed even further. So I'm having a blast tagging with him and just trying to put out good tag matches. But before that, if I go back to the Midwest, guys like CM Punk and Sexy Ace Steel, a great competitor, Danny Dominion, classic Colt Cabana, these guys. There's great wrestling all over this country on the independent level yet to be discovered, and it's a matter of time before these names break out. I mean, there's some really, really good athletes, guys a hell of a lot better than me out there, who deserve their just due, and I'm just happy to be in the ring and wrestling. Frankie Kazarian and Chris Daniels, I had a 3-way match with them for Millennium Pro not too long ago, and that was a blast. We had a good time with that, and some really great athletes. So, I'm having a lot of fun, as I said, and I really wouldn't want to single it down to who I have a favorite with because every match is different. I mean, you work in lightweight one night, heavyweight the next night. So I get a kick out of telling the story and just trying to evolve from whatever I'm there to work with and put something out that's enjoyable and keeps the people entertained.
All right, man. Well, good luck in the future, and that's all I got today, guys. Thanks.
Okay, you're very welcome. You brought up lightweight. When we all started watching wrestling, it was very rare for a guy probably under about 205, 210 to even be in the business. It was pretty much you were locked out.
Right.
And now you can pretty much be just about, as long as I guess you're about 140 pounds, if you got to be super talented. What are your thoughts as far as that changing trend? And also how to use them? Because I just as an example, I love the smaller guys, but I think that they have to be used smart, and when they're not used smart, I think that they detract from the product.
I agree. I think that, anyway, obviously the wrestling business now is a lot more athletic than it was when it was, 300 pounds, 6'7" giants out there. Me, I'm about 235, so I would have been considered, 10 years ago a lightweight. But now I'm kind of in the middle of the pack there, and I think that we have to split up the card evenly to make sure that it's not oversaturated with one type of thing. And I think that at times you don't want to stick someone who, like, let's say, for instance, Spike Dudley. I wouldn't want to put him with bigger guys constantly over time, because what happens is people lose the conception that Spike Dudley's 150 pounds and should be mauled by these heavyweights. And I guess the Giant Killer thing will get him over to begin with, but it gets really old. I'd like to see him in there with Crash Holly like they're doing now, and I think they can have some really entertaining matches. And keep it with guys more in that size range. Even guys like Benoit 10, 15 years ago would be too small to be in the business.
They'd be junior heavyweight title guys, not heavyweight title guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I like the business. I don't want to say more then than I do now. Just because obviously I grew up watching the older stuff, but I think it's a lot more athletic now. I think it's a lot more exciting physically now than it was back then, and I'm just rolling with the punches anyway. I think that the wrestling business is going to continue on this trend and having smaller guys and more athletic guys in there, and then when your big guys come along, then they're huge giant heels for a while, and they phase out. I don't know if it's ever going to go back to the huge giant 6'8", 6'9" guys battling out night after night, and I don't really know if the people would take to that considering what they're seeing now. So I think this trend is going to continue for a while anyway.
I think one thing we learned about from the Big Show is that you not only have to protect the little guys, but you almost have to protect your giants now, just because there's so many guys that are so big.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah, you know what I think one of the keys is I think what you said is a divergence. You know, like if you have like 8 matches and they're all different, I think that the staleness of the product would slow down a lot more than when you have 8 matches. You know, even if they're good, if they're all the same, you know what I mean? You don't want too much sameness.
You don't want to beat a dead horse, that's for sure.
Let's see. This is from Brian Maring from St. Louis, who goes, "You've had some very bizarre emails on the show today. Here's my story. I'm 43 years old, and I've been a wrestling fan since 1972 when I was 14. My heroes at first were Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe, and Harley Race since I grew up in St. Louis. My dad's been a fan longer than he can remember. To give you an idea how long, he met Lou Thez when Lou Thez was in his prime."
Oh, my God.
Lord. Good Lord. You know how long? He's been a fan for like 50 years.
No doubt.
Anyway, he's been a casual fan for the last 20 years because of the lack of emphasis on the actual wrestling and more on the storylines and the interviews. He thinks the reason wrestling is in such a down period is for those reasons I just mentioned. I tend to agree with him. Don't you think there's a lot of burnout by the WF writers? You know, I mean, no doubt the WF writers. Yeah, they're being worked too hard. It's too much TV to fill. I mean, you got to remember in the old days when we're talking about some of these promotions, they were doing maybe 1 to 2 hours of television a week, depending on the company. And now we're talking about 4 hours of a lot faster paced stuff. I mean, they could get away with, you know, longer matches. You know, just basically in the old days it was match, interview. I mean, now you have all these vignettes and show-long storylines and things like that those guys didn't have to deal with.
By the way, with the vignettes, is it me or have they just really sucked the last couple of weeks?
The acting.
Some really bad acting.
The acting is really, really bad. Some of them have been okay. I mean, the idea behind them, but just the execution isn't exactly the best.
I like the Austin stuff, though.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as...
it's another thing where the idea behind it's really bad, but the way he's doing it is very good.
I agree.
I mean, Austin having people sign a petition, that's a horrible idea. But it was funny last night the way he was doing it.
Yeah. Let's see. It's okay. They seem to be running out of good ideas. Yeah, well, I think they're burned out. I think you're right. Don't you think that getting back to basics is the thing WWF should be doing right now, especially with WCW? I say keep the skits to a minimum, re-educate the fans to actual matches. We don't have to return to 30-minute matches with a guy holding another guy in a headlock for 5 minutes, but at least fans can be taught to enjoy wrestling. I mean, that's if you put the emphasis on the TV show on the wrestling and not the skits, sooner or later the fans will think that that's the important thing. Adam,
Yep.
I know you were going to say something.
I agree. I think if they wanted to do that and turn the fans back on to wrestling, it would be easy considering like the Benoit and Angle matches that have been happening lately. Some great wrestling matches, and I think that guys like Jericho and certainly most of the guys on the roster can have matches that are very, very good as well. I think if they wanted to go along that route and maybe limit some of the people who have a problem talking in front of the camera, just let them do their thing in the ring, that they could do that theoretically. I don't know if they will, and I doubt they will, honestly, but I think they could.
Got a couple of pride questions, and we're going to get back to the phone calls. This is, how well do you think Kurt Angle would have done if he decided to compete in mixed martial arts as opposed to pro wrestling? Personally, I think if he had trained for it and set his mind to it, I think just judging from how quickly he adapted to pro wrestling, I think he'd be possibly, the best guy. Hey, he beat Mark Coleman's considered the number 1 heavyweight, and he beat them when they were both an amateur.
Right.
And I think that Kurt Angle adapts to new things quicker than Mark Coleman. So he'd have been a force for sure. And this is from Bob Martin, who goes, I live in Canada. There's a Pride pay-per-view on tonight. I think it's tomorrow night, but it may be different from Canada. I've never seen Pride before, but we talk about it. What's Pride about? It's basically shoot fighting, although the main event actually has 2 professional wrestlers in it that are it's like an interpromotional match between pro wrestlers in Japan. But it's a shoot fighting group, and if you like UFC, you'll like Pride. If you don't, you won't. So it's a good show. It's a good show, the one that's going to be on this weekend. We're going to go to Tony in Long Island. Tony, what's up?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey.
Doing really good.
Great. I missed like the first 40 minutes of the show, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. But specifically, I wanted to talk about Tajiri, and I just wanted to say that guy, it's unbelievable how much charisma that guy has. I mean, that guy's got more charisma than Blackman and Test and Bob
Blackman, come on, okay, you know. So he's got more charisma than the Rock. Whatever, but no. Blackman.
I think
anyway.
He's a charismatic freak, Tajiri, and I love him with Steve Regal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tajiri's facials are great. I love looking at his face and the way that he moves. It's incredible. He makes me laugh every time. And a hell of a worker, too, by the way. Hell of a worker.
Dave, does he speak any English, or...?
I think he speaks English pretty well, yeah.
Oh, he does, okay.
Or I know he understands it.
I think he speaks selective English.
Uh-huh.
But he understands it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the pairing. I can't get enough of him and Regal together. I think they're tremendous. I hope they keep that together for a little while and let that kind of find its way through. And I thought I'm enjoying the Stone Cold stuff as well. Did you guys notice when he was getting Finkel to sign? Did you notice him rubbing Finkel's head while Finkel was signing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's stupid stuff, and I don't know if it's going to really make a difference in the buy rates and all. But I think it's definitely a more fun show in the last couple of weeks anyway. So I think over time, hopefully that'll translate.
over the last few weeks, and I won't include the last 2 shows, but the wrestling on the TV's gone. Wrestling quality's way up. The main event on Monday was outstanding, but they did more comedy. Here's the thing, I love Steve Austin as a heel because I think he's a phenomenal heel. But I think that, and I want everyone to be clear on this because people are going he's so great or misinterpreting it. And Brian does too, and I think, Adam would agree on this one. I think what we've said on the show is that the timing of when they turned him was wrong for business, and I think that business shows that one plain and clear. I don't even think that can even be argued at this point.
Yeah,
but as far as his actual performances, I don't think there's anything wrong with him at all.
No.
Oh, no.
Certainly nothing that he's doing. Maybe things he's been asked to do, but nothing that he's doing.
And guys, I wanted to ask about Rick McGraw. Now, there was a small guy that I used to like watching as a kid. Mm-hmm. And was it strictly because of his, he wasn't necessarily small, but he was short, I guess, from what I remember.
He was really short and really thick.
Yeah, really thick. But pretty agile from what I remember anyway.
Yeah, high drop kicks and everything, yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Was that basically, what happened to his career? Just kind of...
He died.
He did?
Yeah, he died in 1984 of a heart attack.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which may have been drug-related, and that's what, that's pretty much what did in his... he was active until, that day. He was on the road.
Right. Yeah, I remember him being quite muscular, so that doesn't...
Yeah.
That's too bad. And one last thing. Dean Malenko. I think the guy... I guess I heard you mention on another show that he's probably going to be retiring, but I think there's another guy who's pretty funny, and I don't think he's being used. I think he's got some comedic attributes that I think could be used better.
He was funny last night. I thought so.
He's got a strange kind of comedy.
Yeah, he does. Kind of warped, but I think they could use him better. So, okay, guys.
Okay. All right. Anything you want to add to that, Adam?
Well, I think, number one, Steve Austin's a top-notch competitor, whether it's in front of a microphone or in the ring to begin with. But I think when you're searching for a top babyface, and I think they're trying to make Jericho that now, or even Benoit or Angle, or you can't find one. You got to search out there. I think they should have waited to turn Steve Austin heel, at least for a while. And I think that at this point now they're trying to search and find that babyface and see what sticks. The Undertaker thing, I don't know what the hell they're doing with the whole wife angle. I don't know. It's hard to follow. I think they need to find somebody who's going to captivate the audience, and I think the perfect guy to do that, and unfortunately they can't do it now, would be Steve Austin.
Okay. Let's go to Robert in Maryland. Robert, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Not too much.
My first question is for Adam. I was wondering, we're looking at the attendance, or rather the ratings, for WWF shows and house shows. How is attendance on the independent scene right now?
The independents are up and down. I mean, if you got guys who smart fans know their attendance is going to be up a little bit, I think that it's down from where it was a couple of years ago a little bit. But a lot of that depends on the territory. Where I'm from, Midwest, now wrestling has always pretty much been a big deal, where the independents could draw 400 or 500 and make a decent payday from night to night. And when I left, they were doing roughly 2.5. And then obviously you have some promotions that draw 10 people a night in and a night out and can't figure out how the hell to book a match to save their life. But I think the independents, especially this thing coming up in October with APW, is going to draw some decent amount of fans and generate some interest. And I think independent wrestling just goes along with the flow as the big two. When the business is down, independents are down. And if people don't want to see wrestling on TV, they certainly don't want to see guys they never heard of. So I think it just all goes with the trends.
Okay, cool. And also, too, Dave or Brian, has WWF released the brackets yet for the King of the Ring, the rest of the King of the Ring?
They don't have them. They're going to decide on them on Monday, I heard.
Okay, I'm just praying to God that we don't have to see a Tajiri versus Big Show match.
No, keep praying, please.
Please pray. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, okay. As far, I asked a question maybe about 6 months ago. I talked about with the performance of the lightweights, with some of the heavyweights get jealous, and you had stated at the time that was more of a concern, and WCW, because of their wrestling product was actually going down. And I'm looking at Tajiri last night, and I'm thinking there's not too much that they could do. I'm sorry, that there's a lot they could do to help him out as far as giving him good opponents, think of him against Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. But as soon as he goes in against Albert and they do that squash match, I'm just hoping they don't do that.
See, the thing with WCW, though, was they had some cruiserweights that were out of this world, and they had some heavyweights with power that were out of this world in a different way, out of this world horrible. Mm-hmm. And at least in WWF, they're top-of-the-card guys. They can go. And, I don't think there's going to be so much jealousy as far as the upper-card guys looking at these little guys and going, these guys can outwork us, we better bury them.
Well, we've talked about, how when McMahon gets desperate, he brings in the 300-pounders. And I'm thinking, again, we a lot of people say he's a genius, and, yeah, he is he's very good at what he does, but to me, genius or just being good at what you do would be teaching people, educating them to appreciate, a good product. And, a lot of us know or feel that, the lightweights would provide a better overall product. And again, like I said, Tajiri was an example of that last night. Matt Hardy maybe, and definitely Eddie Guerrero. But again, I'm just hoping that, again, we talk about how he gets, scared when ratings are going down. And I just hope that he doesn't fall back on the 300-pounders, and 60-minute, Iron Man matches or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So. Well, I don't think we're going to be doing Iron Man matches.
No, that was a bad joke.
Not on television, anyway.
With Albert.
Exactly. That was a bad joke. Okay, and lastly, I guess, how realistic is it that a company like New Japan could buy a company like All Japan?
Well, as far as realistic as a possibility, it could happen. It hasn't happened. That rumor is premature. There was what basically happened was I think about 2 months ago, one of the magazines there, Weekly Fight, which is a weekly newspaper-like magazine, did a story that it was going to happen, and it was basically a story to sell magazines. It was kind of like the old After magazine stories from the old days, where they would just make up stories to sell magazines. And I think that's where the thing got here, was from that story. Now, but as far as legitimately, All Japan cannot draw on its own right now.
Right.
But they can draw these, like their last Budokan was a huge success both in and out of the ring because of New Japan and doing the interpromotional matches. So rather than fold the company, if it got that bad, the idea of New Japan taking it over, it's very plausible. Now the idea of Antonio Inoki buying Motoko Baba, I think that one is not plausible at all. I think that she would rather die than sell her husband's company to Antonio Inoki. Whatever you think about McMahon and Ted Turner, this is a much more personal thing. But as far as like absorbing it or something like that down the road, I think it's plausible.
Okay.
You know.
And actually, one more quick question. I'm looking at NOAH as a federation or as a company. How do they compare as far as like I guess income? Compared to if you compare them to like let's say New Japan, whereas like New Japan.
They're not in New Japan. They're not in New Japan's league.
Okay, would a good comparison be like a WWF to an ECW or?
They're bigger than ECW.
Okay, but a Toryumon perhaps might be like maybe.
Toryumon is probably
a little
smaller than ECW was.
Okay.
But maybe comparable.
Okay.
Because I mean, they're smaller, but they don't have the salary structure. They may have more longevity and more legs, but their guys, you talk about a style that leads to a lot of injuries. That style, those guys are they do so much.
Right.
A lot of them are great workers.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, Adam, anything on that?
You know what? The Japanese style is something that I'll never be good at, but I love watching it. Them guys are athletes and acrobats and doing all that stuff, and I love the stiffness of it. But not for me. Not today, not tomorrow, brother. Not for me.
So you've been overseas, but you haven't been to Japan, right?
Never been to Japan. Did a tour of Europe in '98, and was just strictly American style. Like I said, as goofy as I get is a couple dives and maybe a Frankensteiner here and there, but beyond that, the crazy stuff I leave to the other guys. That's for damn sure.
Got a full bank of calls, so I want to get through as many as we can. We're going to start with Frank in California. Frank, what's up?
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
Going good.
I was wondering, has WWF picked who the stalker's going to be yet?
They have an idea. They've had an idea since they started this one, actually. Now, as far as if it's going to be the person who they're picking, I guess we'll know in about 2 weeks. Because sooner or later he's got to show up.
It's going to be Tito Santana.
And do you know who it might be, or?
Yeah. I know who it's supposed to be, but I'm not going to talk about it because it may not be.
Come on, Dave. Let it out of the bag. Tito Santana's making a comeback.
Brutus Beefcake.
I have a question for you. You have one of the best minds in the wrestling business. Has any major promotions ever offered you to be a booker or anything, or?
I mean, not directly here. This is an offer. Casually, it's been brought up from time to time, although not in the last year.
Yeah. And then I heard that that during I didn't see it last night during Tajiri's match on SmackDown that there's like a big ECW chant, and I read somewhere that they actually deleted some of it out or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty clear last night that they were chanting that.
Yeah.
It sounded pretty loud on TV. I don't think that they mixed, if they wanted to take it out, they could have, and obviously they didn't. But I don't think it.
I even thought they mixed it in. Part of it was so loud.
No, I don't think they did because I heard in the building it was really loud too. So.
Yeah.
And how much power does Paul Heyman have right now?
Enough to get Spike Dudley in the main event.
There you go. That's right. And get Rhino to beat Jericho 2 weeks. And get Rhino to beat Jericho 2 weeks before Jericho's in the main event of a pay-per-view. So he's got a lot of influence right now. He got some of his stuff in, and then when the Benoit Jericho thing in San Jose, which was really his doing, hit so big, since then he's had a lot more influence, which has led to, we've had a lot better match quality. And for a couple of weeks, it seemed the decline in the numbers had leveled off because it was going down every week, and then it started to level off. But then, Raw was slightly down this week, but SmackDown was way down this week. And I don't have a total explanation. Sometimes, ratings aren't perfect either, but that was. I expected a low number because of a lot of things, and one of them is Spike Dudley in the main event, but I cannot come up with an explanation why it should have been a 3.2.
One more question. Is it true WWF is trying to contact Scott Hall to come in?
Yes, that's true. Although not in the last week or two, but was that 4 weeks, 3?
I heard he's supposed to be cleaned now or something.
What'd you say?
What was that?
I heard he's supposed to be cleaned up his act, whatever.
Well, you always get those stories every now and then you get another story about a week later.
Well, I heard he's touring with Japan with Chris Candido, so I don't know how.
Were they on the same tour? He wasn't on the junior tour, was he? Oh, he was on the next tour.
No, he wasn't on the last tour.
Oh, he wasn't on the tour. Okay, someone told me he was on the tour with him.
Yeah, but I think Candido's on the next tour, and I know Hall's on the next tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard Hall had a seizure last week or something like that.
Friday or something. Yeah, and in at the mall, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Oh, anyways, thanks, Dave.
Okay, you're very welcome.
The one thing about Spike Dudley on SmackDown and the ratings is they had no main event announced on the show until like the last 15 minutes or so.
So it's not his fault.
You can't blame him.
Right.
You're right. The fault is that they had no main event announced.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just look at last week. They had the main event announced as the show began.
Yeah.
This week it was like they had nothing. You got Angle and Benoit and Jericho and everyone out of the picture early, and it's like, okay, who's left?
Yeah. Let's go to Alan in Florida. Alan, what's up?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing good.
All right, I had a few questions. I wanted to ask Adam a question after the questions first. What do you think of that angle, or that, I guess, with Perry Saturn acting like he's a retard? And he reminds me a little bit because his partner, that you remember when he used to be part of the Eliminators, Cronus used to act like kind of like a retard. It kind of is, his face expression.
Cronus. Yeah.
I guess we just got to see where it's going. Right now, it's just like another goofball angle that I forget about the next day.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility? Like I know when they went their own ways. Him and Cronus. I don't know where Cronus is wrestling now. I believe Independence and maybe XPW.
Right. XPW, I see his name. Yeah.
Is there a possibility? I mean, did they?
No.
They wouldn't team up again?
He's not. They will not bring him in to WWF. It will not happen.
No, I don't see that he would, be any big help to them. And here's another question. I think I asked you this a long time ago, but I think Balls Mahoney did some interview or something on radio or somewhere, and he mentioned something about ECW that.
Yes, he did.
Well, my question is this: what's the possibility? I know it sounds like why would you worry about it now? I mean, we haven't seen WCW start up yet, but do you think money can be made a little bit? Say Paul Heyman wanted to start up ECW again with help for Vince McMahon, and say like they own 50%, share it. Do you think there could be money made?
I don't think you'll ever see ECW as like a separate company again, but I think that maybe they would do, somewhere down the road like an interpromotional angle type deal in WWF. But as far as another company, it's dead.
You don't think? Because I could see them running shows in wherever they ran before. Where WWF would never run. Like at the War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale or small arenas. I mean, people still liked it. The name ECW, remember it. So
okay, but okay. The thing is that Vince McMahon is in business to make money, and for all, ECW was, there were many things about ECW that were great, and many ideas that came from ECW that were great, but it never made money.
Right.
And so if you think and go, like a lot of people will go, well, why don't they just go back to all these cities? The fact is that Paul lost money running all those cities. Yeah. If like Paul had made money in all those cities, then I would go, yeah, Vince should do it. It's a way to make money. Mm-hmm. But you've got to figure out a way to make money out of it, not just go and repeat the same money losing, stuff that Paul did.
Well, hopefully, WCW. I know it's a different story, but they lost a lot of money too. Hopefully, he won't.
Yes, they lost a lot more than ECW did.
So you never know. Anything could happen in the business.
That's true.
And a question for Adam here.
And you know what? Maybe ECW wouldn't have lost money in those cities if Vince would have promoted it. If there would have been the money behind it to do it, like a WWF show.
Right. Okay, but the thing with them is if the WWF is going to do a developmental territory or a secondary territory, they're going to keep the cost low, like OVW, as opposed to having as opposed to having their developmental territory tour all over the country as a develop. You know what I mean? Because the costs are so high.
To do that with ECW, make it a developmental territory.
Well, I mean, if they were going to, because they already have.
Late now.
Yeah.
And I have a question for Adam.
Plus the other thing, and I really want to bring this up in case is that Paul Heyman does not want ECW. How do I say this? ECW was a great part of his life, but it's over. Right. And I mean, we talk about it from time to time. I mean, when there have been talks of reviving ECW, like the ECW group, and Paul's thought process on this is that ECW is one of those things that will be remembered far more fondly than it probably was when it existed, as long as it never comes back.
He wouldn't want it to come back.
It was a great learning experience and all that, and it got him where he is, but it's over. It's like you have to cut loose, kind of like a relationship that had many good points, but then the relationship's over. You don't keep going back to it because then you end up with a lot of heartache.
We're having the same problem.
And a lot of banana.
And can I ask a question, Adam?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I remember seeing him. I mean, I've heard about him a lot on the internet. I haven't seen him wrestle that much, but I thought he was pretty good. I saw him on that. I guess maybe he could tell the story because I've heard a lot of different things about it. You remember that WXO group that didn't last more than a couple of weeks? What could you say about that?
WXO, when the one-night payday that never lasted. You know, me, Danny Dominion, and Ace Steel up here, when we were in Chicago, we got the call from Rene Goulet that they were doing some big show. We had no idea exactly what was going on, and I think a lot of that we got kayfabed on. So we get on the plane and get down to Florida, and we're looking for this building, and I think we all expected it to be some kind of National Guard armory or whatever, and pull up to this arena in Lakeland, Florida, and this is a big deal. We go on there, and this is supposed to be some national TV that I guess some idiot in Vegas was wasting all his money on syndication and this and that. And they took care of us really well. We got to meet some really great people like Ted DiBiase and to work with him and guys like, Fidel Sierra and obviously Rene Goulet and even guys like Barry Darsow we had a blast with. Scoot Andrews was involved in that as well. We taped, I guess it was 3 weeks of TV in one night, and if you watch it from start to end anyhow, the crowd's nice and full at the beginning, then the second week there's like half the people there, then the third week there's like 4 people there. Mm-hmm. So I think at that point they pretty much knew. Yeah.
A few weeks ago, about a month or so ago, I went to the website because somebody mentioned it, and they said they had a thing on their website. I just tried to go to it now. It doesn't work, but it said WXR returning in 2002 or something.
Oh boy.
I can't see it returning. I think it's
maybe with WoW. Their second season.
Could happen, brother.
A joint show.
If they're paying, I'm there.
And one more quick thing to tell Adam. I heard him mention something before about tag teams. I agree with him because, I mean, there's a few good tag teams in WWF, but those 3 good tag teams have wrestled each other enough times that, what else can they do?
Exactly.
And he mentioned, I think you team up with the Hardcore Kid.
Right, that's what I'm tagging with out here in UPW. Guys got some great talent, and I like the idea of working in a tag team setting. I think that if it's booked right, tag teams in that psychology can make a big comeback, and I think it's a lost art again in wrestling, just like the male manager.
Maybe it would be better. I mean, like he has a development deal, you don't yet, but maybe if you were to get one, hopefully, because I think you're a great wrestler. I've seen stuff on you. I think you deserve a development deal.
I appreciate that.
Maybe I mean, like even also that other guy that was on the show a couple weeks ago. What's his name? Frankie the Future. He wrestles.
Frankie Kazarian. Yeah.
I heard. I didn't even know that he's teaming up with Nova. I heard that they have like a tag team.
Yeah,
I guess going together.
Yeah, we had a hell of a tag match not too long ago for UPW. Me and Hardcore Kid against Frankie and Nova, and we had a blast. And I know that they're putting that tape in front of Jim Ross and hopefully get development contracts. So hopefully something can break for everybody involved.
Okay, let's go to Ben in Minneapolis. Let's not. Go to Luke in Montana. Luke.
Hey.
Luke is.
Yeah. I'm from Montana.
Oh boy.
Okay.
All right. Dave, you said you know who the stalker is?
Oh no. Yep.
I think I do. Yes.
Rios, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
That would be good.
But you know who it is? Do you think if they're going to go with that person, it will be good?
It will not be a letdown. How about that?
Alrighty.
It won't be a letdown. It won't be through the roof. I don't think you won't groan or nothing. It's not like it's going to be. It's not Billy Gunn. Put it that way.
Okay.
You may be confused.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Can you explain this to me? How can the WWF spend like $250,000 on Jeff Jarrett for one night, but they can't spend $6 million on Goldberg for 3 years?
Because they had their backs against the wall on that one night.
Yeah, but
they may have their backs against the wall soon enough that they'll pay that $6 million. But right now, they're not thinking that way yet.
Yeah, but don't you think they could have just said Vince fired Jarrett and they're holding up the title or something if they're that worried about it?
They could have done that. It was Vince's call. It's his money.
That's it.
I mean, it was. He could have done it. I guess he just wanted Jeff Jarrett to lose to China before he went to WCW, and it was that important to him to do it.
All right, and what's the latest on Hulk Hogan?
Supposedly he's got a taping on August the 8th, maybe a few tapings, and trying to sell it into syndication. And I think today was the day they were going to get. Today was like a big day for them, like they were going to get some financial stuff together or something. So maybe in the next couple of days we'll hear something new on that. But it's August 8th is the planned taping date. The last I heard.
All right, and I heard this on the internet, so it must be true.
Of course.
But, I heard Vince McMahon wouldn't let WCW get bigger than the WWF, and
nobody knows. For Vince,
That's impossible
I mean,
to say right now.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think anyone's worried about that this week.
Yeah, but
it doesn't.
Yeah, it
doesn't matter.
If he did, why would he care? Because he owns it and he'd get all the money.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think that anyone's thinking about like the only thing they're even thinking about these days is how to get this thing rolling in a good way.
That's it.
You know, not about like, oh my God, let's get it rolling and make sure it doesn't get too popular. You know, it's like, you know, they can't hold it back. I mean, this is not the time in wrestling where you politically hold things back because you're doing, you know what I mean? When things are going down, you got to exploit anything you can make money with.
Exactly.
You know, the best thing going for right now is that Shane is his figurehead guy in charge because Vince can't let this dude fail. I mean, it's his son. It's the guy that someday is going to be in charge, and he can't let this kid look like a fool.
Exactly.
The other thing also is, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why it hasn't started as quickly as a lot of people hoped, is because after the XFL, one, they hopefully learned some lessons from the XFL, and number two, they can't have two failures in a row. Even if it had nothing to do with Shane, the idea that they, you know, it was bad enough that they failed so bad in the XFL, but to come back and fail in their own business that they're the masters of, it would reflect so badly on them that, like, believe me, they are going to... The one thing is that they are going to work themselves to death to make this thing succeed, and hopefully it will.
And you know what? They're going to end up losing money for a while on it, and I think they expect that to happen. They have
at the beginning, of course they do.
The whole thing. You know, so, I mean, if it gets big, and they're going to roll with the punches, exactly like you put it. If it gets huge, they're going to continue to make it huge. Whatever puts the dollar bills in the wallet is going to happen.
Yeah. Adam, I want to thank you very much for joining the show.
I appreciate the offer, and I come back anytime you guys want to hear me ramble.
Okay, anytime.
No problem, and I'll see you guys down the line. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we'll definitely be seeing you at the King of Indies, and maybe when we go back to L.A.
Sweet. See you guys then. Thanks.
Okay, you're very welcome. That was Adam Pearce of Ultimate Pro Wrestling, and I want to thank him for doing the show. Of course, thank Brian and Al for all the help this week. We'll be back Monday. We're going to have a big show. We've got Jim Cornette, and I can't wait for that one.